The year is 2147, and humanity isn't where it used to be. Earth? That's a distant memory, now a planet scarred by greed, wars, and environmental collapse. People talk about it sometimes, like an old legend passed down through generations. But no one alive today has seen it. Instead, they live on a small colony orbiting Kepler-62f, a faraway exoplanet bathed in the dim glow of its fading star. Life here isn't easy. The air outside their domes is toxic, the soil barren, and resources are stretched thin. Every day feels like walking a tightrope over an abyss. Yet, despite all this, there's something oddly poetic about their situation. They've left behind the blue skies and green fields of Earth, but found themselves staring at the vastness of space, searching for meaning under a dying sun. At the heart of this fragile existence is a woman named Ilara Voss. She's not your typical hero, no cape, no grand speeches, but she carries the weight of the colony's survival on her shoulders. Ilara spends most of her days hunched over monitors in a dimly lit observatory, tracking the erratic behavior of their star. It's been acting strange lately, flickering and pulsing in ways that make everyone uneasy. And Ilara knows better than anyone what's happening. The star is dying, faster than expected, for 14 long pages, or maybe it was hours. Who knows? Ilara sits alone with her thoughts as she studies the data pouring in from telescopes scattered across the colony. Her mind races with theories and calculations, each one more unsettling than the last. This isn't just any ordinary stellar death. It's something else entirely. Something unnatural. She grabs a worn notebook filled with scribbled equations and diagrams, flipping through pages until she lands on a section marked Gravitational Anomalies. There's a pattern here, hidden beneath layers of noise. Tiny fluctuations in gravity, almost imperceptible, suggest interference. Interference means someone or something is tampering with the star. Ilara leans back in her chair, rubbing her temples. She's exhausted, both physically and mentally. Sleepless nights have become her routine, and caffeine has replaced meals. Still, she can't shake the feeling that she's missing something important. What could possibly interfere with a star so far out in the galaxy? Who would even bother? Her thoughts are interrupted by a knock at the door. Standing there is Commander Elias Kane, the leader of the colony's governing council. He's a tall man with sharp features and a commanding presence, though his eyes betray the weariness he tries to hide. Elias doesn't visit the observatory often, not unless there's trouble brewing. Got a minute? He asks, stepping inside without waiting for an answer. Ilara nods, gesturing toward a cluttered desk. What brings you here? Elias pulls up a chair, brushing aside a stack of papers. We've got reports coming in from multiple sectors. Strange energy pulses disrupting communications. Power grids failing sporadically. People are scared, Ilara. She sighs, already knowing where this conversation is headed. It's the star, she says bluntly. It's collapsing faster than we anticipated, but there's more to it. I think it's being manipulated. Elias raises an eyebrow. Manipulated? By whom? That's the problem, Ilara replies, leaning forward. I don't know yet. But these gravitational anomalies aren't natural. Someone or something is accelerating the process. If we don't figure out why, we might not have much time left. Elias frowns, clearly skeptical. You realize how crazy that sounds, right? A dying star is bad enough. Now you're telling me aliens are involved? I'm not saying aliens. Ilara counters quickly. Just external forces. Look, I've run the numbers. A star shouldn't be behaving like this. Not unless someone's messing with it. Elias stares at her for a moment, weighing her words. Finally, he nods. All right, let's say you're right. What do you need? Relief washes over Elara's face. Access to the long-range probe. It's our best shot at gathering more data. If I can pinpoint the source of those anomalies, maybe we'll have a fighting chance. Elias hesitates before agreeing. Resources are limited, and sending the probe into deep space will drain precious fuel reserves. But he knows Elara well, enough to trust her instincts. Besides, if she's wrong, they're doomed anyway. If she's right, well, they might stand a chance. As Elias leaves the observatory, Elara feels a mix of hope and dread. Hope because someone finally believes her. Dread because she knows what's at stake. This isn't just about solving a scientific mystery. It's about survival. For everyone on the colony, including herself. Over the next few days, Elara works tirelessly to prepare the probe for launch. She double-checks every system, recalibrates sensors, and programs complex algorithms to analyze incoming data. Sleep becomes a luxury she can't afford, but she pushes through, fueled by determination. Finally, the day arrives. The entire colony gathers around the launch site, watching silently as the sleek silver probe ascends into the sky. For a brief moment, hope fills the air. Maybe, just maybe, they'll find answers. Answers that could save them all. But as the probe disappears into the void, Elara can't shake the nagging thought in the back of her mind. What if the truth isn't what they want to hear? What if the star's death isn't random or accidental, but deliberate? Little does she know, the probe's journey will uncover secrets far beyond anything she imagined. Secrets that will challenge everything they thought they knew about the universe and their place within it. The probe's journey into deep space felt like an eternity. Back on the colony, life continued as usual, or as close to usual as it could get when you're living under a dying star. People went about their routines, trying to ignore the growing tension in the air. But for Elara, every second dragged by like years. She spent most of her time glued to the monitors, waiting for the first batch of data to come streaming back. When the information finally arrived, it was overwhelming. Gigabytes of raw numbers, spectral readings, and gravitational maps flooded the system. At first glance, it looked like chaos random noise scattered across the cosmos. But Elara wasn't one to give up easily. She dove into the data with relentless focus, poring over every detail until patterns began to emerge. What she found stopped her cold. Out near the edge of the solar system, far beyond where any human ship had ever ventured, were massive structures floating silently in the void. They weren't planets or asteroids. They were something else entirely. Geometric lattice, shimmering faintly against the blackness of space, each larger than anything humanity had ever built. Their shapes defied logic, twisting and folding in ways that seemed impossible. It was as if they existed outside the rules of physics. Elara stared at the images, her heart pounding. This wasn't just some random discovery. It was proof that they weren't alone. Whatever these things were, they weren't natural. Someone or something had put them there, but that wasn't all. Embedded within the energy pulses emanating from the structures were faint signals. At first, they appeared to be static, meaningless bursts of radiation. But as Elara ran the data through advanced decryption algorithms, something remarkable happened. The signals started to form patterns. Patterns that resembled language. Her hands trembled as she typed furiously, translating the alien script into something comprehensible. Hours turned into days, and slowly the message became clear. Your time has ended. Prepare. The words hit her like a punch to the gut. She read them again and again, hoping she'd made a mistake. But no matter how many times she checked, the translation remained the same. Whoever or whatever had sent this message wasn't offering help or friendship. It was a warning. A countdown. Elara knew she couldn't keep this to herself. She called an emergency meeting with the governing council, presenting her findings to Commander Iles Kane and the others. The room fell silent as she displayed the images of the structures and played recordings of the translated signal. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then chaos erupted. "This is insane," shouted Arlen Cross, a burly engineer who had become increasingly vocal in recent weeks. His face was red with anger as he slammed his fist on the table. "You're telling us aliens are out there, and they've already decided we're done for? That's ridiculous." "It's not aliens," Alara corrected calmly, though her voice betrayed her exhaustion. "We don't know what they are. All we know is that these structures are real, and they're interfering with our star. And now they've sent us a message." Arlen scoffed. "Even if this is true, and I'm not saying it is, what exactly do you expect us to do about it? Pack up and leave? We barely have enough fuel to keep the colony running as it is." Commander Elias raised a hand, silencing the argument before it escalated further. "Enough," he said firmly. Turning to Alara, he asked, "Do you think these beings are responsible for the star's collapse?" "I don't think they are," Alara replied. "The gravitational anomalies, the energy pulses, the structures themselves, it's all connected. They're harvesting the star's energy. We're just collateral damage." The room grew quiet once more. The weight of her words sank in, heavy and suffocating. If what she said was true, then the colony's days were numbered. Not because of resource shortages or environmental disasters, but because of forces far beyond their control. Elias leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. "All right," he said after a long pause. "Let's assume you're right. What's our next move?" Alara hesitated. She hadn't expected him to ask that question so soon. Truthfully, she didn't have a plan, not yet. But she couldn't afford to show weakness, not now. Taking a deep breath, she said, "We need to investigate further. Send a team to examine the structures up close. Maybe we can communicate with whoever or whatever is behind this." Arlen snorted. "And risk getting ourselves killed? Sounds like a great idea." "We don't have a choice," Alara shot back, her patience wearing thin. "If we stay here and do nothing, we're dead anyway. At least this way, we might learn something useful." Elias considered her proposal carefully. He knew Arlen had a point. The mission would be dangerous, possibly suicidal. But he also knew they couldn't ignore the threat looming over them. Finally, he nodded. "Fine, we'll assemble a crew and send them out. But we'll need volunteers. No one gets forced into this." Alara volunteered immediately, of course. There was no way she'd sit idly by while others risked their lives based on her discoveries. To her surprise, Arlen stepped forward too, though his reasons were less noble. "If anyone's going to speak for the colony, it should be me," he declared. "I won't let some scientist make decisions that affect us all without having a say." Elias agreed to lead the mission himself, knowing morale would plummet if he stayed behind. Together, they formed a small team, selecting skilled individuals from various sectors of the colony. Mechanics, engineers, medical staff, all willing to risk everything for a chance at survival. As preparations began, panic spread throughout the colony. News of the alien structures and the ominous message leaked quickly, sparking fear and unrest. Rumors flew faster than facts, and soon people were pointing fingers, looking for someone to blame. Some accused Alara of causing the star's instability with her experiments. Others demanded immediate evacuation, despite knowing it was impossible. Tensions reached a boiling point during a public assembly held in the Central Dome. Hundreds of colonists gathered, shouting over each other as tempers flared. Arlen seized the opportunity to rally support for his cause, denouncing the Council's handling of the crisis and calling for drastic action. "We're sitting ducks here," he roared, his voice echoing through the crowded hall. "If we don't act now, we'll all be wiped out." Elara watched from the sidelines, feeling both frustrated and powerless. She wanted to explain, to reassure everyone that they were doing everything possible to find answers. But she knew her words wouldn't reach them, not now, not when fear clouded their judgment. Commander Elias tried to restore order, stepping onto the makeshift stage to address the crowd. "I understand your concerns," he said, his tone firm but calm. "Believe me, I do, but panicking won't solve anything. Our best minds are working around the clock to figure this out. Trust us, we're doing everything we can." His words did little to quell the anger simmering beneath the surface. Still, the meeting eventually dispersed, leaving behind a restless and divided community. As Elara walked back to the observatory, she couldn't shake the feeling that time was slipping away. Every argument, every delay brought them closer to Disaster Dot back in her lab. She stared at the images of the alien structures once more. Despite the fear gnawing at her insides, a spark of curiosity ignited within her. Who were these beings? What did they want? And why had they chosen this moment to intervene? She didn't have the answers yet, but she vowed to find them, even if it meant confronting the unknown head dash on Dot. As the launch date approached, the mood shifted. Fear gave way to determination, uncertainty replaced by resolve. The crew worked tirelessly to prepare the Aegis, a decommissioned exploration vessel chosen for its durability and range. Supplies were loaded, systems checked, and contingency plans drawn up. Everyone knew the odds were stacked against them, but they pressed on regardless. On the morning of the mission, the entire colony gathered to see them off. Faces lined with worry and hope watched as the team boarded the ship. Elara took one last look at the crowd, committing the moment to memory. This wasn't just about saving herself. It was about proving that humanity still had a fighting chance. With a final burst of engines, the Aegis soared into the sky, leaving the fragile colony behind. Ahead lay the unknown, a journey into the void that promised danger, discovery, and perhaps redemption. For better or worse, the fate of the colony rested in their hands. The journey aboard the Aegis wasn't what anyone expected. Sure, they'd prepared for danger equipment failures, hostile environments, maybe even alien encounters, but nothing could have readied them for the sheer strangeness of space near the structures. From the moment they entered the region, reality itself seemed to bend and twist around them. At first, it was subtle. Instruments flickered unpredictably, readings jumping between extremes without explanation. The ship's navigation system struggled to maintain a steady course, as if gravity itself had gone haywire. Time felt off. Hours passed in what seemed like minutes, only for moments later to stretch into eternity. It was disorienting, maddening even. Some crew members joked nervously about being trapped in some cosmic funhouse, but deep down, everyone knew this was no joke. Elara spent most of her time in the observation deck, staring out at the alien structures that loomed larger with each passing hour. They were unlike anything she'd ever seen or imagined. Up close, their intricate designs became clearer. Shimmering lattice of light and shadow, pulsating faintly with colors that defied description. It was beautiful, yes, but also terrifying. There was something alive about them, as if they weren't just machines or constructs, but extensions of whatever intelligence had created them. One night, or what passed for night on the ship, she stood alone in the dim glow of the monitors, replaying the translated message over and over again. Your time has ended. Prepare. Those words haunted her. Was it a warning? A threat? Or simply an indifferent statement of fact? She couldn't shake the feeling that these beings saw humanity as little more than ants. Scurrying beneath a magnifying glass. Her thoughts were interrupted by Elias, who walked in quietly and leaned against the railing beside her. For a while, neither spoke. The silence between them was heavy, but not uncomfortable. Finally, he broke it. "You think we'll make it back?" he asked, his voice low. Ilara hesitated before answering. Honesty warred with hope inside her. "I don't know," she admitted. "But I do know one thing we can't turn back now. If we run, we're admitting defeat. And that's not who we are." Elias nodded slowly, though his expression remained grim. "Still, it's hard not to feel small, like none of this matters in the grand scheme of things." "It does matter," Alara said firmly. "To us, it matters. Maybe those structures out there represent something bigger than we can comprehend. But right now, all we've got is our own survival. That's enough." Her words seemed to settle something in him. He straightened up, gave her a small nod of thanks, and left the room. Watching him go, Alara felt a pang of guilt. She hadn't told him everything not yet. There were patterns in the data she hadn't shared, anomalies she couldn't explain. Something about the structures suggested they weren't just harvesting energy. They were communicating, constantly. Through every pulse, every ripple in space-time, there was meaning encoded. She just hadn't cracked it yet. As the Aegis drew closer to the largest structure, the effects intensified. Crew members began reporting strange sensations, flashes of memories that weren't theirs, whispers echoing in empty corridors, visions of places they'd never been. At first, they tried to dismiss it as stress or fatigue, but when Arlen started acting erratic, everyone took notice. Arlen had always been a man of action, someone who preferred straightforward solutions to complex problems. But now, he paced the halls muttering under his breath, his eyes darting nervously as if he expected something to leap out at him. When confronted, he insisted he was fine, but the fear in his voice betrayed him. "It's messing with us," he snapped during one particularly heated discussion. "These things, they're not just here to harvest stars. They're playing with us, testing us." Ilara didn't disagree entirely, though she suspected it wasn't malice driving the phenomena. Still, she kept her theories to herself, knowing it wouldn't help calm the growing unease among the crew. Instead, she focused on finding answers. When they finally reached the heart of the largest structure, they discovered something extraordinary. A chamber filled with holographic projections. Images floated in midair, shifting and rearranging themselves, like pieces of a puzzle. Each projection depicted a different civilization, some primitive, others advanced beyond imagination, all rising, thriving, and ultimately falling. Every cycle ended the same way, with the arrival of the cleanup crew. The sight left the team speechless. Here was proof that humanity wasn't special, wasn't unique. Countless others had come and gone, their stories swallowed by the vastness of the universe. Yet somehow, amidst the despair, Ilara found a glimmer of hope. These beings weren't mindless destroyers. They operated according to rules, principles. If they could understand those rules, maybe they could negotiate. "We need to show them we're different," she said, breaking the stunned silence. "Not better, just worth considering." Elias frowned. "And how exactly do you propose we do that?" "I don't know yet," she admitted. "But I think the answer lies in these projections. Look closely, they're trying to tell us something." She pointed to one image in particular, a species that appeared to have survived longer than the others. Their technology was less advanced, their cities simpler, but their interactions radiated harmony. They worked together, shared resources, and adapted to challenges collectively rather than individually. They made it further because they cooperated. Ilara realized aloud, maybe that's the key. Prove we're capable of working together, of putting aside our differences for the greater good. Arlen scoffed. "You really think holding hands and singing songs is going to save us?" "No," Alara shot back. "But showing unity might. Think about it, the colony's divided right now. People are scared, angry, looking for someone to blame. What if we give them something else to focus on? Something bigger than themselves? Elias considered her idea carefully. It was risky, sure, but it was also their best shot. All right, he said finally. Let's figure out how to send a message, one that shows we're willing to change. Back on the colony, life continued in a haze of uncertainty. Supplies dwindled, tempers flared, and arguments erupted daily. Morale was at an all-time low. Then, unexpectedly, communication came through from the Aegis. The crew explained what they'd found and proposed a bold plan: create a beacon transmission showcasing humanity's creativity, resilience, and capacity for cooperation. It would be their play for mercy, their chance to prove they deserved another shot. The idea sparked debate across the colony. Some dismissed it as naive, arguing that aliens wouldn't care about human values. Others saw it as their only hope. Slowly, however, a sense of purpose began to take root. Engineers repaired broken machinery. Scientists developed sustainable solutions. And even Arlen, back on the colony after insisting he stay behind, set aside his grievances to help organize the effort. Together, they poured their hearts into the project. Artists painted murals depicting humanity's greatest achievements. Musicians composed symphonies blending traditional and modern sounds. Writers crafted essays exploring themes of unity and perseverance. Every contribution mattered, no matter how small. For the first time in years, the colony felt united not by fear, but by hope. Finally, the beacon was ready. A massive antenna tower rose from the center of the settlement, its tip glowing softly as it powered up. Everyone gathered around, holding their breath as the signal launched into the void. It carried with it everything they were, everything they hoped to be, a testament to their struggle, their dreams, their determination to survive. For hours, days even, they waited anxiously for a response. The star continued to weaken, casting long shadows over the domes. Fear crept back in, whispering. Doubts and fears. Had they done enough? Would it even matter? Then, just as despair threatened to consume them, the skies lit up. Not with destruction, but with light, a warm golden glow that bathed the colony in a brilliance no one had seen since leaving Earth. The dying star stabilized, its energy redirected toward rejuvenating the planet's ecosystem. Life returned. To the barren soil, air quality improved, and for the first time in decades, people stepped outside without protective suits. Through tears and laughter, they celebrated not just their survival, but their ability to come together in the face of impossible odds. Humanity wasn't perfect, far from it, but perhaps that was the point. Imperfection didn't mean failure. It meant potential. Potential to grow, to learn, to adapt. As the celebrations died down, Alara stood alone once more, gazing at the newly revitalized sky. Somewhere out there, beyond the stars, Solace watched silently, waiting to see if humanity would rise to meet the challenges ahead, or fade like so many others before them. The moment the beacon launched into space, a strange calm settled over the colony. It wasn't relief, not yet, but a quiet kind of resolve. Everyone had done their part, poured their hearts into creating something that might save them all. Now there was nothing left to do but wait. And waiting, as anyone who's ever faced uncertainty knows, is its own special kind of torture. Back aboard the Aegis, the crew felt it too. They'd sent the transmission and were now drifting closer to the largest structure, hoping for some sign of response, an acknowledgement, anything that their message had been received. But the silence stretched on, heavy and suffocating. No one spoke much during those hours. The hum of the ship's engines filled the void between them, a constant reminder of how small they were in the vastness of space. Ilara spent most of her time staring out at the alien lattice, her mind racing with possibilities. She replayed Every detail of the beacon, the images, the music, the words, wondering if they'd done enough. Would these beings even understand? Or worse, would they see humanity's plea as weakness? Her thoughts were interrupted when Elias called everyone to the main deck. He stood near the control panel, his face unreadable. "We've picked up something," he said simply. His tone didn't give anything away, but the tension in the room spiked instantly. "What is it?" Arlen asked sharply, stepping forward. "Another pulse?" Elias shook his head. "No, something else." On the monitor, a faint glow appeared at the edge of the structure. At first, it looked like static random bursts of light flickering across the screen. But then the glow coalesced, forming a shape, a figure. It wasn't solid, not in the way humans understood solidity. Instead, it shimmered and shifted, made of swirling patterns of light and sound. The being, if you could call it that, hovered before them, radiating an energy that was both calming and overwhelming. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Ilara stepped forward, her voice steady despite the knot of fear in her stomach. "Can you hear me?" she asked cautiously. The being responded not with words, but with vibrations that resonated through the ship. It wasn't unpleasant. Exactly, but it was intense, like standing too close to a massive bell as it tolled. Slowly, the vibrations resolved into something resembling language. Not human language, but something close enough for Alara systems to translate. "You have spoken," came the reply, the words appearing on the monitor. "Explain your worth." Alara swallowed hard. This was at the moment everything hinged on. She glanced at Elias, who gave her a subtle nod of encouragement. Taking a deep breath, she began to speak. "We are flawed," she admitted, choosing her words carefully. "We've made mistakes, terrible ones. We've destroyed our home, fought among ourselves, acted selfishly. But we're also capable of great things. Creativity, resilience, cooperation. We've survived against impossible odds, adapted to new worlds, and learned from our failures. That's why we're here today, to show you that we're still learning, still growing." The being didn't respond immediately. Instead, it seemed to study them, or perhaps study the data embedded in their beacon. Images of Earth flashed across the monitors. Lush forests, bustling cities, moments of joy and sorrow captured in art and music. Then came scenes of the colony. People working together, building, repairing, creating something new out of scraps. And hope. Finally, the being spoke again. "Your species is young, fragile, yet you persist." "Why?" This time, Elias stepped forward. "Because we want to live," he said firmly. "Not just survive, but thrive. To leave something behind that matters, to make the universe better, even in small ways." A being paused, its form rippling like water, disturbed by a stone. "Betterment is subjective. Many seek only self-preservation. Few consider the greater balance." "That's true," Ilara interjected quickly. "But isn't that what you're in? Maintaining balance? Harvesting resources to sustain other worlds? If that's your goal, maybe we can help. Maybe we can find a way to coexist." The being didn't answer right away. Instead, it extended a tendril of light toward the ship, probing gently. For a split second, memories flooded Alara's. Mind visions of countless civilizations rising and falling, each one leaving behind echoes of their existence. Some had resisted the cleanup crew, fighting until the end. Others had surrendered without question. None had tried to negotiate. "You are unique," the being finally said. "Few attempt dialogue. Fewer still offer proof of value." Alara's heart raced. Was that approval, hope, or just another test? "There is merit in your effort," the being continued. "But survival requires more than effort. It requires action. Collective action." "Collective action?" Elias echoed, frowning. What does that mean? The being didn't elaborate. Instead, it withdrew slightly, its form dimming. Return to your world. Your star will be spared for now. Use this time wisely. Prove yourselves worthy. Before anyone could ask more questions, the being vanished, dissolving into the structure. The Aegis shuddered briefly as the gravitational anomalies subsided, leaving the crew floating in eerie stillness. When the Aegis returned to the colony, the news spread quickly. Solace, the name they'd given the being, had granted them reprieve. Their star wouldn't collapse after all. Instead, its energy would be redirected to rejuvenate Kepler-62f, giving the colony a second chance. Cheers erupted throughout the settlement, and for the first time in years, people allowed themselves to feel hopeful. But amidst the celebrations, Alara couldn't shake the weight of Solace's final words. Prove yourselves worthy. Did that mean? How much time did they have? And what would happen if they failed? She voiced her concerns during a meeting with the governing council. This isn't over, she warned. They've given us a chance, but it's temporary. We need to keep working together, keep improving. If we fall back into old habits, if we let fear divide us again, we'll lose everything. Commander. Elias nodded grimly. She's right. Unity got us this far. We can't afford to lose it now. Over the following weeks, the colony transformed. People worked harder than ever, not just to rebuild, but to innovate. New technologies emerged, designed to conserve resources and reduce waste. Conflicts that once sparked riots were resolved through dialogue and compromise. Even Arlen, who had always been quick to criticize, found himself pitching ideas for sustainable farming methods. Still, Alara couldn't ignore the nagging doubt in the back of her mind. Solace hadn't promised permanence. Its actions suggested a larger purpose one that transcended individual lives or planets. Humanity had earned a stay of execution, but it was clear they were being watched. Judged one evening as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the domes, Alara climbed to the highest point in the settlement. From there, she could see the entire colony spread out before her, fields of green sprouting where once there was barren rock, wind turbines spinning lazily in the breeze, children laughing as they played outside. It was a fragile beauty, but it was theirs. As she gazed at the stars, she thought about the countless civilizations Solace must have encountered. Some had thrived, others had perished. Humanity's story wasn't finished, yet not by a long shot. But whether it ended in triumph or tragedy depended entirely on what they chose to do next. The universe had given them a second chance. Now it was up to them to decide what to do with it. The days that followed Solace's intervention were unlike anything the colony had experienced before. For the first time in years, there was a sense of purpose, a shared understanding that their survival wasn't just about scraping by anymore. It was about proving something bigger, that humanity could rise above its flaws and contribute to the greater balance of the universe. Alara watched it all unfold with a mix of awe and unease. On one hand, she couldn't help but feel proud of what they'd accomplished. The colony had come together in ways she never thought possible. Teams worked around the clock to implement sustainable systems. Farmers experimented with new crops that thrived in Kepler-62f's revitalized soil, and engineers designed tools that reduced waste and increased efficiency. Even small acts of kindness, sharing food, helping neighbors repair damaged equipment, seemed to carry more weight now. Everyone knew they were being judged, not just by Solace, but by themselves. But on the other hand, Alara couldn't shake the feeling that this newfound unity was fragile. It had been born out of desperation, a collective response to an existential threat. What would happen when the immediate danger faded? Would people slip back into old habits? Or would they hold on to the lessons they'd learned? her fears weren't unfounded. Tensions began to creep back in as resources tightened again. The initial burst of energy that had fueled the colony's transformation started to wane, replaced by exhaustion and doubt. Some argued that they'd done enough that Solace wouldn't return anytime soon, if at all. Others insisted they needed to push harder, to prepare for whatever test might come next. Arguments broke out during council meetings, and whispers of division spread through the settlement. One evening, Elias called Elara to his office. He looked tired, his shoulders slumped under the weight of leadership. "We're losing momentum," he admitted, rubbing his temples. "People are getting complacent. I don't know how much longer we can keep this up." Elara sighed, sinking into the chair across from him. "I've been thinking about that too. We need something to remind everyone why we're doing this. Why it matters." Elias raised an eyebrow. "Any ideas?" She hesitated and nodded. "What if we build something permanent? A monument or maybe a museum to honor our journey. So far, something that reminds us where we came from and why we have to keep moving forward." The idea took root quickly. Over the next few weeks, the colony rallied around the project. Artists, builders, historians all pitched in to create a structure that would tell their story. They called it the Legacy Vault, a circular building made of glass and metal, its walls etched with images and words, chronicling humanity's struggles and triumphs. Inside, artifacts from Earth sat alongside tools and technology developed on Kepler-6 2F. There were also recordings voices of colonists sharing their hopes, fears, and dreams. When the Legacy Vault was finally unveiled, the entire colony gathered to celebrate. As the sun set, casting golden light over the domes, people filed inside, marveling at what they'd created together. For many, it was the first time they truly understood the scope of their journey, not just as individuals, but as a species, standing. Near the entrance, Elara felt a lump rise in her throat. She hadn't expected the project to affect her so deeply, but seeing everyone come together like this reminded her of why she'd fought so hard in the first place. Humanity wasn't perfect, but it was capable of incredible things when it chose. To unite, months turned into years, and life on the colony settled into a rhythm. The star remained stable, its energy fueling both the planet's recovery and the colony's growth. New generations were born, children who had never known Earth, but who grew up surrounded by stories of its beauty and its mistakes. Slowly, the scars of the past began to fade, replaced by a cautious optimism about the future. Still, Elara never stopped looking toward the stars. Every night, she climbed to her favorite spot on the hill, overlooking the settlement, scanning the horizon for any sign of Solace's return. Part of her hoped it would come back, eager to see how far they'd come. Another part dreaded it, terrified they might fail whatever test awaited them. Her vigilance paid off one fateful evening. As she gazed upward, a familiar shimmer appeared in the sky, a ripple of light and sound that sent shivers down her spine. Within moments, the air vibrated with the same resonant hum she remembered from her encounter aboard the Aegis. Solace had returned. This time, it didn't approach the colony directly. Instead, it hovered silently above the planet, observing. The message came through clearly, broadcast to every screen and speaker in the settlement. Your progress is noted. You have proven adaptability and cooperation. Yet challenges remain. Will you continue to evolve or stagnate? The question hung in the air, heavy with implication. No one spoke for a long moment. Then Elias stepped forward, addressing the glowing figure in the sky. "We'll keep going," he said firmly. "Not because we're afraid of judgment, but because it's the right thing to do for ourselves, for this planet, and for the universe." Solace lingered for a while longer, its form pulsating softly. Finally, it spoke again. "You are resilient. Continue to seek harmony. Your efforts will shape what comes next." With that, it vanished, leaving behind only silence. In the days that followed, the colony buzzed with renewed determination. People redoubled their efforts, tackling problems they previously ignored. Conflicts were resolved more peacefully. Innovations flourished, and even the youngest members of the community found ways to contribute. The Legacy Vault became a symbol of their commitment, a reminder that their journey was far from over. Ilara spent her final years watching the colony thrive, knowing she'd played a role in shaping its destiny. When she passed away, the settlement mourned her loss but celebrated her legacy. Her work had laid the foundation for a brighter future, one built on unity, resilience, and hope. As the decades rolled on, the colony continued to grow and evolve. Though no one ever saw Solace again, its presence lingered in their minds, a constant reminder of the responsibility they carried. Humanity wasn't perfect, but it was learning. And perhaps that was enough. On clear nights when the skies were free of clouds, people still gathered on the hill where Ilara used to sit. Together, they gazed at the stars, wondering what lay beyond. Somewhere out there, Solace watched silently, waiting to see if humanity would rise to meet the challenges. Ahead or fade like so many others before them. But for now, they endured. And in enduring, they found meaning.